you. I'm going to be very quick because I work with Joe and Iffy and partnership. I'm Harrod, and when we got together, we often collaborate on projects, and when we got together to try and understand what it was that unifies all the brands in terms of what they look for, we felt that trust was a key component, and it has different forms of work that Joe and Iffy will take you through. But we felt that there aren't very good measures of trust just now. There are things like Interbrand and Edelman who cover it, but it's fairly superficial, fairly expensive. So in collaboration with the Signify team, we try to come up with an index that helps us understand, as you said, you've kind of stolen all of what I was going to say, in a quick and cost-effective way, how to measure it. So I'm going to hand over to Joe and Iffy to take you through.
Thanks, Nick. Can I have the clicker as well? Hi, I'm Joe, and Nick and I have been working together for 8 years, and you can date it really precisely because of this man. We set Signify up because he'd beaten Trump, because he'd beaten Clinton, and we wanted to show that data science could be done in a different way from kind of Steve Bannon and the kind of the Cambridge Analyticas of this world. And his re-election has given me kind of a terrible professional and personal deja vu, but it also exactly marks kind of 8 years that we've been doing this. And I guess in that time, Signify has been dedicated to sort of trying to improve the discourse. That's gone terribly. Everything is getting worse, much, much faster than we thought, and the quality of information that people are navigating has also got worse. But we have become kind of experts in understanding disinformation, the impact of campaigns, the importance of influencers, and we work across brands and sports brands, media brands, and NGOs, trying to understand what people care about and trying to understand what the levers are on that. And the trust work that we're going to talk to you about today is kind of a different, and as Nick said, it's at the moment it's quite empirical. We're trying to be mathy about it, but it's a way of looking at what we've always been doing, which is pulling massive public data sets, running kind of semantic analysis over them, using the AI to quickly direct us to trends, coming themes, emergent influencers, and then briefing people on what they should do in order to improve their communications. That's what we've done all the time, but trust is a kind of interesting prism for it. And I guess we've worked with Nick all that time, but the other day he turned around to me in a social setting and said, everything's getting worse. Brands need to concentrate on the things that emotionally matter to their consumers, and trust is kind of where we landed on that because it's a very important context. So I guess this is the bit I'm imagining that this audience will want to dive into a bit at the end. Our researchers have come up with a currently unweighted formula. We are starting to use this with paid clients now, and I'll talk at the end if people are interested about how you add layers of machine learning rigor and stuff as you begin to do paid work. I will show you a couple of demonstrations at the end after Iffy set the context, but the primary way into this is through earned media coverage, social coverage, engagement with brands, and then a kind of crisis modifier. And the process is very similar to what we've always done. So you're pulling as much public data as you can. You want it to be from sustainable sources. You want all the brands to be operating with equivalence. So you don't want to pull loads of stuff that disadvantages a particular brand within your index. Then you're using NLCs to identify key topics. But we've also now customized that to think about, well, what's the sentiment towards the brands in terms of trust? And that is I've been on a real journey with that because I used to be a salesman for IBM back in the day, and I would say, oh, machine learning models are getting better at understanding context and sentiment and sarcasm. And then one of my team pulled me aside and said, look, there'll never be a machine that will understand that, so just stop saying that. You're kind of overselling it. And then when I set up Signify, I would always say, well, sentiment doesn't really work. You need human analysts to go in and verify things. But actually, some of the LLMs are getting quite good at kind of giving you a first steer on context and what people think about things. We're still operating in the UK, where 95% of discourse is sarcastic. And then analysts go in, they kind of look at, okay, well, what's the moment? Why is it driving trust? We then work with Nick to flesh that out and talk to whoever the target market is about, okay, well, what gives you the feels? What makes you... We have hypothesized from the data that you like long-form YouTube videos, that builds credibility, that you like an app that looks good, makes you think, well, this is a proper brand, not a plastic brand. And can we flesh that out? Can we talk more about it? Can we get some product ideas from you? And then we always work with the client to do a sort of interactive solution. So that is me for now. I'll be back with a couple of live data sets.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yes. So I'm Ify, I'm a research associate at Signify. You might be wondering why trust is relevant to this conference beyond the fact that obviously we're doing it with tech tools. I mean, if you read at the placards, it says doing more with less. And traditionally, trust is a very lengthy process. It takes time to build, and especially when it comes to larger audiences, it's really hard to get people to trust you. But with this tool, we've managed to make it a lot more efficient and effective. Before we set out how we do it and why it matters, it's important to clarify some things. First of all, trust is not likability and popularity. So for example, I like low-cost airlines. I really do, because I mean, they're low cost and they're easy to book. But do I trust them necessarily? Not really. Same with interpersonal relationships. You trust someone because you've been through a lot with them and they've proven themselves that they're a trustworthy person. But with brands, it's not really the same. Sometimes you trust a product because you've used it and you know it's going to deliver. But most of the times, trust is preemptive. You trust a product will deliver because you've heard that it's good, you've heard that it's trustworthy, and that's why you're going to buy it. And this is where we step in, because what we can do is that we can measure talkability, we can measure engagement online, and we can measure the reputation. And this is what helps make that preemptive trust stick. So, before we dive into how to build trust, it's important to understand a little bit more the context that we're operating. And at the moment, we have trust in traditional institutions, from the media to politics, everything you can think of, just eroding. And people are turning to social media, which is the expected thing to do. Nonetheless, there's just so much sheer volume of voices and different opinions and different actors saying different things that is really hard to build genuine trust. Some of the things that we're noticing in our work, but there's nonetheless many that we could think of, is that first of all, algorithms shape online what we see. But usually they shape that based on very flawed assumptions. So the algorithms feed us what we think we're going to like based on some characteristics that the social media apps have captured. But it's not necessarily the case, and that can make it really hard to build genuine trust. The second thing, which we mostly focus on with Signify and Hook, is the fact that engagement is driven by controversy. So to build trust, you need to build engagement. You need to appear on someone's feed online, you need to be visible, and you need to make that trust stick. Nonetheless, when engagement is built with controversy, because controversy is something that makes people comment, like, share, then your social media feed goes completely different. For example, we had done a project on ULEZ, and we had seen that there were so many voices speaking against it, which is absolutely fine. But how it happened was really interesting, because we saw, for example, this account called Brown Car Guy, who was just generally discussing cars and taxis and Ubers in London. And nonetheless, when he started talking about ULEZ, which is a political and fairly controversial issue, he started gaining a lot more momentum. So then he did it again, and then he did it again. And obviously, this rise in views is not just that he becomes more popular and famous. Many times it's tied with a financial gain. So people are incentivized to be controversial. It's really hard to build trust when the environment is like that. And brands are not immune to this. Think of a Christmas ad. Probably the first one you think is a controversial one. So with that environment taken into account, also adding the fact that there's just so much Gen AI out there. Sometimes it's the late Pope Francis looking really cool in a puffer jacket. Sometimes it's actually something really misleading that has people second question if what they're seeing and what they're looking at is trustworthy, something they can believe in. It just becomes so hard to make that trust stick and to have brands promote products that build a relationship with their audience. Nonetheless, we're not here to fix algorithms. We're here to appreciate the fact that we all have the same tools. So how do we use those tools to make trust stick? So one thing we've noticed with Signify, and the most important thing, is that personality matters a lot. I'm sure you're not surprised by the fact that influencers is the new thing. But nonetheless, the reason why it's really important when it comes to trust is because those influencers have a very niche audience, specific demographic, people that would go back to them, they were going to listen to them, and it's not the same as being a celebrity. Because a celebrity is someone that is famous and you trust because of aspiration. But an influencer is someone that builds a community grassroots. So that's why people are going to sit down and listen to them. From a commercial point of view, it can be very good, especially if you find an influencer before they blow up and they can, you can pay a lot less and deliver a lot more when they become popular. But often at times when it comes to more societal or political issues, you have a serious problem when it comes to people like Andrew Tate that are influencing younger audiences perhaps to more bad and dangerous behaviors. So it's a give and take with those things. But what it is important to remember is that personality matters. Oh, sorry. And last but not least, which is something that we have developed an expertise in, is how you speak to your audience to make that credibility and trust come to life. So what we've noticed is that it's not just essential to know the demographics of your audience and target it in a very niche way. It's also important to know how to talk to them. And that can differ from demographic to demographic and generation to generation. So something that we did is that we can break down with our technology what kind of formats stand out, which differs from audience to audience. Sometimes we've noticed with Gen Z and younger audiences that they prefer longer formats, which is quite surprising because everyone's saying, oh, on TikTok, everyone has a short attention span, the younger generations are not paying attention, but we have identified quite the opposite. People are going to sit down and listen, they prefer watching longer videos, and also we've noticed that you can really easily identify what kind of topics resonate. And once you identify that and stick to that methodology, it's going to deliver at a much shorter time. So for example, we've worked with a charity that implemented some of our recommendations, and they saw an uptick in their engagement by 300%, if I'm not mistaken, which was quite impressive and made us feel very proud. This is all from me, but the next examples are going to come from Joe.
Thanks, Sophie. Thank you. So we're going to look at a couple of real data sets. I should get the caveats in first. This is increasingly not an experimental methodology. We're getting more set in the methods. But the two things that I'm able to share, because they're not for paying clients, we were still iterating, working out which LLMs we wanted to use, working out which are the sustainable data sources. But essentially, this is pulled from all of earned media coverage, all X coverage. We spend millions on our data environment because we are the market leader for preventing online abuse. If any of you have heard of Signify, it's probably in relation to protecting athletes from online abuse. We protect everyone at the Olympic Games, everybody that plays in the World Cup. We are famous for that work, and it enables us to access a massive amount of data from X and to have a kind of a good frenemy relationship with Meta. And all of that kind of access gives us sustainable data sources. But for this method, we did not use any metadata because X, Reddit, YouTube, and Blue Sky are the ones that are absolutely on a par for all companies because you can pull data from their APIs in a consistent fashion. So when we say sustainable, it's not necessarily free, but it's consistently accessible to us. And we quickly ran this using LLMs to give us a first suggestion on sentiment for comments and validating that the kind of the trust sentiment was in the right direction. And then we took it to an association of insurers and to a couple of our financial services clients and said, what do you think of this? And they all said the same thing, which is we completely understand why Tesco is the bottom ranked after the last 12 months of kind of stories in the tabloids, particularly about non-payment of seemingly legitimate claims, but we don't understand why Zurich is top. And I think that's probably the most interesting part of it, because they'd be like, Direct Line, that feels right, very trusted brand, never on price comparison sites, do their own thing, but they are a very trusted brand. But why is Zurich top? And the answer came back from my analyst. The really skew point in the data was how many casual mentions there are in YouTube comments and on X, and particularly on Reddit, of people just saying, I use them, they're okay. So it's very mild, but a very broad base of people who are like, well, I use Zurich, it's okay. And that profusion and kind of ubiquitous presence is a very important factor in the formula. Oh, I can't go back. There we go. So this is the second example, and this is even more challenging for the researchers. If you think about trust in insurers, that's quite measurable. We're now doing FMCG brands and retail banking and stuff like that. It's very measurable, got very clear signals. This is news media, where trust, as well as being expressed in behaviour, is a live issue. And you get people talking back and forth. And some channels have their champions, and some channels have people who hate them in every single dimension. So it's extremely challenging, but the methodology for this is basically consistent. We use the same sources, and we looked at 6 months of discourse of 100% of their coverage. So it's like, what are people saying about everything that they're writing? And obviously, a lot of that news in that time. Well, the thing that we really notice is how profuse GB News is, because they tend to write 10 articles for every other article that people get out there. But The Guardian was also very profuse. Guardian was rated very highly. We're going to speak to The Guardian about this, but we have spoken to BBC News about this already. And they suffer because they have people who hate absolutely everything that they write, and that is expressed and comes out within the algorithm. But there are no brands that have as staunch defenders as GB News. However, if you post a GB News link into Reddit or to YouTube comments or to any kind of neutral space, you will immediately be swarmed by people saying you shouldn't even share that, I don't like it, I don't think it's accurate. So all brands are low in terms of trust in the news space. Everything below 50 is kind of in the low end of the index score. And the one piece of cheerful news from this, which we highlighted for the BBC and we will definitely highlight for The Guardian, is within the commentary. So for insurance brands, it's the casual mention that builds trust. For news brands, there's not much that builds trust, but their excellent reporting really helps. That's why ITV is up there, because although it's fictional, although it's a factional, fact-based thing about a real-world event, and although Private Eye broke the story about 17 years ago, the Mr. Bates thing is kind of associated with ITV News, and people often bring it up. And so within this time period, there's a very strong skew for excellent reporting by Channel 4, excellent reporting by ITV News, and as something to cheer up all of the brands on there, when people do very, very good reporting, that creates a sense of trust and identification. So those are two real examples. We are now doing this live firing, and I'm going to hand back to Nick to sort of take this home before questions.
I mean, there's not that much to add, to be honest. The main thing to add is, as I said before, I mainly work in kind of the qualitative space, and my clients don't want to pay lots of money for qualitative research a lot of the time. They want a broad brush approach that gives them an understanding and allows them to take action. And that's why I get Signify to help and collaborate with out the door a lot of the time, because they have this vast data set and they can triage it rapidly, and they can come up with insights and findings that immediately engage and provoke and hopefully inspire clients to do. And that, I guess, is the point of the conference today: speed and cost effectiveness, and they deliver that in a way that, for me, that has made clients think, do, and led them to further research in the future.
Okay, could I open it up to questions?
You brushed over the Daily Mail. You know, why are they up there? You know, like I understand why they don't like me. I steal your jobs, your daughters. You know, but why are they trusted?
Do you want to take this, or shall I? They have their advocates. They are extremely ubiquitous, so they are the only people writing stories on lots and lots of local issues. Theirs is the strategy that GB News is copying now, and GB News is very concerning to me on a macro level, because in the past 8 years they've gone from being the 150th most influential source to being in the top 5 or 6 for every project we do, from like carpets to what people are watching on TV. You see GB News just soaring up the rankings. Daily Mail are kind of the incumbent, and they just write so much, and they are linked to an awful lot as an authority. So that within the weighting of the formula, that means that they have a lot of trust from their audience. And what they don't get anymore, because GB News has come along and is now acting as the bad guy, you don't get people saying, I never read the Daily Mail, you shouldn't share that link, etc. That behaviour is less, anecdotally, because now you've got a new beast, which is the GB News.
Yeah, I was just curious, because I guess like the sort of traditional approach to sort of measuring brand trust would be sort of tracking longitudinal tracking things, or quantitative surveys with checking sort of brand equity. What do you see are the sort of pros and cons of this sort of approach versus those sort of more like the kind of classic quantitative research approaches?
I'll take this one as well. I love a survey, and with most of our media clients, we'll be running either Global Web Trends or YouGov, really long term. I've got nothing bad to say about traditional quant measures, because sometimes there's no substitute for asking a question. But the key difference here is that it's unprompted. So A, we don't have to commission, and we don't have to, we can't be quite as precise in our definition of audience, but we can be reasonably precise in terms of demographics and geolocation. So you don't have to commission quite so elaborately. It's very quick, and it's unprompted, which means often you're saying to clients, well, nobody cares. A very nice example being recently with the Co-op and Marks and Sparks cyber attacks, being able to say to our interested client in that sector, it's 8% of your coverage this month. So nobody cares. They care much more about Dubai chocolate and new lingerie than they do about your cyber attack. But yeah, it's unprompted, so it's real behaviour. So that's the key difference. But I did a very long intro there about how much I love surveys. I genuinely do, and I think that digital unprompted data plays quite nicely with what you also know from your longitudinal surveys.
Thank you for the presentation. We also work with social data, and when we started working with social data, there was a lot of parallels with quality issues that we could see with panel data. And we did like an audit of all the main suppliers to try to understand what were their data cleaning protocols with social data. And the most common answer was there was none. So it's a bit of a tricky question, but I'll ask it anyway. If you had to estimate what proportion of the social data you see from the main platform being bot generated, precisely for the reason that you mentioned earlier, that more controversial type of content generate traffic, how would you estimate this? And the follow-up question with this is, we know with panel quality issues, it's a very hard conversation to have with clients. So how tough of a conversation it is to be quite candid and say that to a degree we don't know up to what point the whole proportion of the social data that we have is actually real data versus bot-generated data from whichever origin.
It's just a massive question. Let's not go too deep into this. Over the 8 years, we've developed a real expertise in bot and account-focused analysis, particularly with our work with Threat Matrix, looking at people who are abusing individuals or campaigns or athletes or events. You can identify bot-like behavior quite often. Often when people think they're being swarmed by bots, they're being swarmed by real people who are just cutting and pasting. It can just be activist behavior. But in the commercial space, there's an awful lot of bot activity and just garbage. And Twitter/X is getting worse and worse and worse. Twitter used to be, 8 years ago, the most marvelous research tool that's ever been created in the universe. And now we have increasingly tough questions from every single client about, well, what about Twitter? I haven't been on there for 3 years. It's just a cesspit, and you can still find 9,000 really highly engaged Dungeons and Dragons fans on there if you want to. But it is a less high quality pool. It's still very important for the worlds of journalism and the worlds of sport, because it's such a second screen thing, and reasonably important for TV. But the behavior and profile of people on X has changed a lot as well, because people have been driven away who don't have an interest in sport or crypto or a reason to be there. So degrading source there, Blue Sky, designed to be exactly the same quality of research tool, all open source at the moment, rather than £500,000 a year, which is nice, but it's absolutely tiny. And then Meta and X, the reason why we don't have them in the mix is because that is a arms race of data gathering, and to be consistent is particularly difficult to be consistent for clients. So we only do that for clients who want it, which is about 95% of clients, because you've got really great quality data on there, but you have to decide what you're looking for. So you go within specific hashtags, you're looking only for mentions of your brand and maybe 3 or 4 competitors. And that makes it a rational thing that you can do and where you can compare things naturally, but we have to do that on a paid basis. So this is the longest answer ever. We get tough questions from clients all the time. The most recurring question is, what about X? And how much of this is X? We don't like it. And it's a visceral thing, but also they're right. As a data source, it's going down. And the best quality is Reddit and YouTube comments, which are really sort of often irrelevant, but fantastically authentic, unprompted data. Does that answer a quarter of the question?
Okay, yeah, we're out of time, but thank you to Nick, Joe, and Ify for your presentation. It was great. Thank you.